Why Media Group? The fastest growing media group in North America.
I'm Ritesh Malik, Chair of Canada-India Foundation. Today we held this conference, United Against Extremism, just to address the evils of extremism in our Canadian society. What we see happening in Canada, is not good for our future generations. The way extremists or extreme ideologies have space in Canadian mainstream, we feel affected by it on daily basis, and we don't feel safe, and this was a larger discussion to actually address those issues. Recently we had 40th anniversary of Kanishka bombing, and we still see that ideology thriving on streets in Canada and getting all the space in Canada. So this conference was a small attempt by Canada-India Foundation in Tafsig to start that discussion in mainstream and see how we can actually help and protect our country, Canada, which we love a lot. And as Indo-Canadians, we feel on daily basis the issues which community faces from extreme elements. Unnecessarily, a lot of people in the community are tagged as agents of India or, to be aligning with India. But we feel it's very natural to, kind of talk about the country where you come from, leverage the strength you have from your networks in India for the benefit of Canada, the country which we call home now. The kind of economic opportunities India presents today, it is in larger interest of us Canadians to have a great working economic relationship with Canada. But that's only going to happen once we as Canadians and as a country address these extremist issues, which I'm sure India has a problem with. So that was the whole purpose of the conference, and people showed up in huge numbers, which of course means that people don't want to be part of that ideology. They don't believe in that. It's only a handful of a small section of people who believe in that ideology, and this is just a beginning. And I'm sure going forward, a lot of discussions of similar nature will take place, and which will help Canada and Canadians. And we will want to have a stronger relationship with all our allies.
Hello everyone, my name is Yudhir Jaswal. I'm the group editor at Why Media. And in the month of June, you always remember the victims of 1985 Air India attack. And first of all, on behalf of Why Media, I would like to pay tribute to all the victims of this extremist act. This was one of the biggest mass murders here in Canada. And I think we should all stand united against extremism. Violence doesn't serve any purpose. We could have different opinions, but I think the discussion on the table is always welcome. So, and especially in countries like Canada or anywhere else in the world as well, I think we should have a discussion, a dialogue, and we should always raise our voice against extremism, against any form of violence. And one thing I've always mentioned that yes, there are so many violent incidents happening across the globe. Sitting here in Canada, yes, we can discuss that. Maybe we want to protest as well, but let's not support any kind of violence. Let's say no to any sort of violence. Thank you so much.
I'm Ujjwal Dosanjh. I'm here to attend this event. It is an event that will talk about extremism and violence in Canadian society, political violence, transnational oppression, and how all of those things are being weaponized. And I came as an observer, and I'm happy to be here to make sure that we actually carry on the campaign against extremism and violence in this country.
I just came here as an observer, and I've been commandeered to say a few words, and so bear with me. This issue that this conference is addressing is a very, very important issue. It has been important, particularly in the context of Air India and the Khalistani extremism since 1984. Politicians in this country have neglected this issue for a very, very long time. When Air India happened, politicians in this country thought these are brown people, they belong to India, no Canadians, so Mulrooney actually extended condolences to Rajiv Gandhi. I had been attacked in February of '85 and hospitalized 2 or 3 months before Air India, and I had written to all of the attorneys general across the country, including the federal attorney general as well as the prime minister. I may have received maybe 2 or 3 replies to that letter. And the letter said, and if I remember correctly, that if this violence is not nipped in the bud, if extremism is not challenged at its core, we may have murders in this society. And unfortunately, my words came true in the largest aviation terror in the history of the world before 9/11. Politicians need to address this issue. For the last many years, I would say they've been not only silent, but their silence has been complicity in extremism. Because if you're silent in the face of extremism in your own country, you may have all the good charters attached to your constitutions, they mean absolutely zero. Because if you don't have the courage to speak, extremism will continue to grow. And in fact, if you do not protect and defend the values that are enshrined in that charter, the values, remember, as Canadians, those values that are enshrined in the charter came first. Charter simply enshrined those values. Values don't come from the charter. Values come from the Canadian experience. Values come from our history, our politics, our development as a country. We're not perfect. We're actually more perfect than most. And politicians haven't had the courage, generally speaking, to confront terrorism in the name of so-called multiculturalism, in the name of so-called not offending people. And I think that that's been a tragedy in this country. It's being changed. It is changing a little. Former Prime Minister Harper spoke some days ago and clearly said that if we dream of governing for Canadians as Canadian political parties, then these kinds of extremist, sectarian, separatist elements have no place in those political parties that dream of governing this country. And that was the clearest expression yet of what I have been saying for a long, long, long time. And in fact, what Prime Minister Carney has done by simply ignoring the Khalistani extremists and try and extend a friendly hand to India, despite the problems that we have. You know, when you are governments of two great countries like Canada and India, a shared history of Commonwealth and all of those things, you can actually work on multiple tracks. If Canada thinks it has a problem vis-a-vis so-called Niger assassination, then it can work on that. Yet, we should not be saying that India becomes an enemy based on one suspicious criminal activity. And I think it's important for us to remember that, particularly now, with Mr. Trump across the border, we need to have friendly countries with whom we can trade and have exchanges and the like. I want to mention one of our former prime ministers, whose name you all know, starts with a T. Not the older T. I had the ultimate respect for the older T, who actually said, "Watch me," when he dealt with the extremists. Quebecois extremists. I remember him saying in the Vogue magazine in one of his first interviews after he took over that Canada has no mainstream, that we have no core values. Well, if we don't have a mainstream, if we don't have a core value, we actually have no business being a country. The fact that we are a country, the fact that we have produced something like Charter of Rights from our previous experiences, that tells you that you're a country, and you're a great country. But because certain people like him did not believe that we have core values, they did not defend those core values. It's a free for all. I remember his famous expression, if you come to Canada, you can be who you are. Well, I say to Canadians, and I've said this many times, if you want to come to Canada and you want to be who you are better off where you are because you are who you are already. Because when you come to Canada, learn something about our values, integrate, become a Canadian, and make sure that we are a peace-loving, peaceful country.
Fighting extremism is very important, and the organizers have done very good job organizing this event today. Extremism is a real threat in the modern world, especially youth radicalization is a problem. When different segments of the society, they promote their own kind of extremism, they kind of promote separatism, that they exist separately than rest of the society, then that's the problem. The cohesiveness in the society, especially Canadian society, where we have people living from different backgrounds, different religions, different countries, it's very important for countries such as Canada to have cohesive society, and extremism is a very direct threat to such open societies. So I think it's a very important subject, and the organizers are doing a very good job to discuss all kind of issues surrounding extremism.
And for the sake of our viewers, would you just introduce yourself?
My name is Balraj Deol, and I belong to Indo-Canadian community. I'm living here for a long time, and I was also in ethnic media for about 21 years, publishing Khabarnama, Punjabi Weekly, which I folded due to age factor. So I'm a retired person now, but I do have good experience with ethnic media.
Why are we gathered here today? What was the need? Let me say this as simply and firmly as I can. This is not a conference against any individual, not against or for any religion, not against or for any country, not against any community, culture, or ethnic group. This is for Canada and us Canadians. We are all Canadians here who believe in equality, justice, peace, and universal brotherhood, not Muslim brotherhood. We have Christians, Muslims, Hindu, Jews as speakers, and many Sikhs and others in audience who all put Canada first. But make no mistake, this is a conference against an ideology that preaches violence as a solution, that radicalizes individuals to harm innocent people, that breeds hatred and deep divisions in our society, that seeks to separate communities and sow mistrust among neighbors, an ideology that threatens the safety, security, and way of life we hold dear in Canada. And we are not talking about distant or abstract dangers. We are speaking about real threat and freedoms we hold sacred, that exploit our generosity, and tolerance for dark agendas. And we must name a growing danger. The weaponization of foreign interference. The same extremist elements are using foreign interference to silence and alienate voices that oppose their agendas. They hide behind claims of victimhood while working to destabilize our society from within. This is not the Canada we inherited. This is not the Canada we want today. And it is absolutely not the Canada we want for tomorrow. Canada is built on freedom, diversity, inclusion, and the belief that everyone belongs. People come here or were born here, trusting in a country where we respect different faiths and traditions, we resolve differences peacefully, we debate ideas vigorously, but coexist as neighbors and friends. Extremism rejects all of that. It thrives on fear, suspicion, and hostility. It drives wedges between communities. It seeks to silence moderate voices and rule through intimidation. We must have honest conversations as citizens with our policymakers and our elected representatives. Canada's generosity cannot become our weakness. We need controlled and merit-based immigration, not because we want fewer immigrants, but because we want immigrants who help build Canada stronger rather than becoming a burden on our system and result in chaos on streets and communities. We must ensure immigration serves Canada's economic, social, and security interests while remaining compassionate and fair. That's why we are here today, united in purpose and resolve, to send a clear message: Canada will not tolerate extremism in any form. We are here to share knowledge about how extremist networks operate, to understand how they recruit, fundraise, and spread their poison, to equip ourselves as individuals, communities, and institutions to spot warning signs early and take decisive action. We are here to build bridges so extremists find no fertile ground for hatred, to develop policies that balance civil liberties with security, and to demand strict laws against crime and criminals to keep our communities safe. We must have zero tolerance for extreme ideologies. Above all, we must ensure Canada's generosity is never used or abused as a cover for foreign agendas. Yes, we must be vigilant, but we also must be wise. As we were talking in the morning, educate youth on real world, not just school, college education backed by strong value systems. We must not let the fight against extremism become a reason to stigmatize entire communities or faiths. That's precisely what extremists want, to divide us. We cannot give them that victory. We need to call them out. They are morally hollow and cowards. We must stand together, stronger, wiser, and more united than ever. The stakes are high for our safety, our communities, and the future of Canada we love. For our Canada of peace, freedom, respect, and hope. This conference is for Canada. Let us work together to keep it that way. Let us remain united against extremism. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Anil Shah. I'm the past chair of Canada-India Foundation. This initiative by Canada-India Foundation in collaboration with Optic, the organization which is led by the Jewish people, united against extremism. Canada has been facing challenges all around from a lot of terrorist organizations that have been housed here in Canada since early days. We are not even recognizing the real threat. The threat of terrorism is real. We just have to face and accept and stand against that, and which is why this conference is being held, United Against Extremism.
Okay, my name's Meera Nair, and I was invited to attend this event today. It's been a wonderful affair. I'm really impressed with all the speakers, the range of the programming, and for me, the topic of extremism is connected to the bombing of Air India Flight 182 in 1985, Canada's worst instance of terrorism. And I wanted to come and try to contribute and just share what I know.
My name is Josh from the LA Podcast here at the National Security Conference here in Toronto, and it's been a good old time introducing. We had a great second panel this morning talking about national security issues as it pertains to media and talking about what that role is, what it looks like in terms of a conversation and a topic that is deeply kind of like, and no one really likes talking about it. It's a little dry. It doesn't seem as important until you start seeing what's happening to various groups and communities across our country where people are just, being targeted. Some are violence being perpetrated against them just for their beliefs or what they look like. And, if you're like me, that's bad. So that's kind of what our focus is today and what we're talking about. And it's been a very positive time. Myself, Jasmine Lane, Clyde Do Something, and Wyatt Claypool, we've all been kind of collaborating together on a panel to talk about these things, and it's been a great time.
And I often say that where it is, it's never discussed. Where it may not exist, it's always discussed as an excuse to avoid discussion where it actually exists. So I'm just laying it out as a framework, and the costs different communities have to pay. Communities maybe all three of us belong to. They are really weaponizing this concept of foreign interference against our communities. So that's the framework. That's all I wanted to do. But I also wanted to ask both of you today. I know the CSIS report did not define foreign interference. I know you guys have opening remarks, but somewhere in this discussion, maybe we can define foreign interference. Let's try. How about that? If CSIS does not want to define foreign interference, maybe a bunch of Canadians will do that for them. So who wants to go first?
All right, as Canada's top foreign interferer
in India,
I've committed foreign interference, domestic interference, foreign domestic interference, and domestic foreign interference. So the current definition of foreign interference is someone at ANI News Network in India tweeting something at the Canadian government. That is not a great definition. That's what our Melanie Jolie's RRR Rapid Response Report, that's what foreign interference was. Like literally, here's a journalist tweeting about Justin Trudeau at a meeting, and they classify this as foreign interference, which started to make everyone go, huh. Now we do have legitimate foreign interference. The real foreign interference scandal that we should have been talking about at the time is there might be 11 MPs in Parliament loyal to the Chinese Communist Party. That is foreign interference. So to define foreign interference, because if you're just like any foreign national doing anything on Canadian soil, influencing, you could be from China, you could be, I guess, pro-Chinese government, and you could take selfies in Vancouver and go, oh, what a great trip I'm on. I really love my, company, Foxcom, whatever that I work for. Thanks for sending me. Are you influencing Canada? Sure, but that's not foreign interference. I'd say foreign interference is a deliberate attempt by a hostile foreign government to influence policies or institutions in our country. So some random Chinese lady tweeting out a picture about her vacation and mentions how much she loves the government, not foreign interference. Actual agents of the Chinese Communist government, mailing dead rats to Taiwanese activists, foreign interference.
Is lobbying foreign interference according to you?
No, not if it's registered. So this is the other thing where it's like, if you're a foreign lobby organization, as long as it's registered, I'm fine with it. But there is definitely foreign interference through lobbying, because if you're a foreign entity and you're hucking money through a Muslim Brotherhood front group to then influence policy here, that can be foreign interference. But if you're a Canadian and you're like, I think we should have more rights to carry guns because on my farm there's coyotes and that's dangerous, and then you lobby the Canadian government, you're lobbying, that's different. But if you're lobbying on behalf and paid for by a foreign government and a hostile foreign government, that would be that. So like, you know, people are going to accuse the Canada-India Foundation of foreign interference because you are lobbying the country of Canada to have increased business ties with India. But that's not like a policy thing, and that's like kind of central to our foreign policy. Like, it's an allied country, it's a, you know, democracies working together. That's a reasonable request, right? You can have, right, democratic trade. And then I think there are foreign interference efforts, particularly among China and Pakistan, to stymie this effort because a stronger trade relation between India and the West undermines Pakistan, because Pakistan, like the jihadi terrorist groups in Gaza, can't defeat the IDF militarily. Pakistan can't defeat India militarily. So they've learned the most effective way to conduct warfare is through third parties or third countries that are permissive to it. So Pakistan, their air defense isn't great, but their Twitter offense in Canada is much more effective than whatever, you know, gobbled together secondhand Chinese missile system they have.
So now I want you to make your opening remarks.
It's on.
All right? Okay. One of the key words that I seized on from your explanation is that the idea of the hostile foreign nation plays a big part in determining what is foreign interference. The problem is that idea as to who is going to be deemed hostile is subjective, to say the least, when it comes to, you know, matters of government. Anyway, I can't ever just answer a question, so just bear with me. To me, it's always about context. And when we're talking about politics, then context, you know, takes on a life of its own. So as I was sort of mulling over what this was all about, I started with the title. This is a conference about national security. And that phrase, you know, ought to be self-explanatory. You know, it speaks to the security of the nation and everybody who resides within its borders. But I have to say, in my notes, I've put a question mark after the phrase national security, because I am not at all certain that the goal of national security is sufficient to ensure that all the actions taken in the name of national security are actually one and the same. Now, 12 years ago, I had the extraordinary good fortune to spend some time in Jerusalem, courtesy of the Azrieli Foundation. I was there as a postdoctoral researcher. Oh, by the way, just again, my field is copyright law, nothing to do with national security. Anyway, had this wonderful time in Jerusalem, and my then teenage offspring summed it up quite nicely. She said, Israel does real security, Canada does theatrical security. So, out of the mouths of babes. Now, as far as where we are at this moment in our most recent sort of political unveiling, it was on June 18th with the annual report of CSIS, that is the Canadian Security Intelligence Service. Coincidentally, that same day, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation released a remarkable documentary titled Two Suitcases. And this is the work of the incomparable Angie Seth. And it is about the 1985 Made in Canada bombing plot to bring down 2 Air India airliners in mid-flight. And as we all know, they were successful with Air India 182, where 329 lives were lost. And the second bomb, designated to detonate over the Pacific, detonated on the ground in Tokyo, so averting hundreds of deaths, but 2 baggage handlers lost their lives. This act of domestic terrorism was orchestrated by Khalistani extremists operating in Canada. So the juxtaposition of these 2 unveilings of June 18th makes the first sentence of the CSIS report a bit of a farce. For 40 years now, CSIS has protected the safety, security, and prosperity of Canada and Canadians through trusted intelligence, advice, and action. As was eventually revealed by the 2 public inquiries, the bombing was entirely preventable. Had CSIS and their partner at the time, the RCMP, actually exercised intelligence, advice, and action. Now, to be fair, the bombing is not entirely absent from the CSIS report. On page 29, CSIS refers to Canada-based extremists in connection to the bombing, and then states, the failure to disrupt this event provided several hard lessons for CSIS to learn as a young security intelligence service.
Unfortunately, there is little evidence today to suggest that those lessons were lasting lessons. And when I look at our present challenges as far as India and the charges of foreign interference there, I found the section of the report to be quite shallow. From page 39, Indian officials, including their Canada-based proxy agents, which I'm guessing would be you, engage in a range of activities that seek to influence Canadian communities and politicians. When these activities are deceptive, clandestine, or threatening, they are deemed to be foreign interference. These activities attempt to steer Canada's positions into alignment with India's interests on key issues, particularly with respect to how the Indian government perceives Canada-based supporters of an independent homeland that they call Khalistan. Now, I have to say, right up to this morning, I had assumed the CSIS report had gone through the same sanitization that was, last year's Nisikoff report. That is to say, the Prime Minister's office would deem what was to be in the report. And it was only after hearing Mr. Dosanjh speak that I now realized that was the unedited report. That peculiar choice of phrasing that I just read only works if one discounts entirely, or possibly doesn't know, that Canada has at least 331 reasons to be wary of Khalistani activity happening on our own soil. So where I'm sitting now is this sort of grim realization that CSIS analysts don't know or don't know enough. And I'm assuming that these are the people that would have been children in 1985 or possibly not born and have grown up in this atmosphere of either a vacuum of accurate information or the onslaught of misinformation that has been propagated by Khalistani channels. Now, polling conducted this year by Leger, which no Canadian media outlet chose to report, states that a mere 10% of the Canadian Sikh community supports the goal of Khalistan, 54% are opposed, and 72% want stricter policies to prevent foreign separatist agendas from being organized on Canadian soil. So I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge those incredibly brave people within the Sikh community that are choosing to speak out and are suffering the consequences, that they face ostracism, harassment, they can lose their jobs, and we also know of the sad stories of those that were beaten up violently and those that were murdered. So all of this is to say that our fixation on foreign interference or the policies that have been taken in the name of foreign interference are having a direct consequence for the Canadians here at home, making a bit of a hash of the idea of national security.
Why Media Group? The fastest growing media group in North America.